So fixation, regression, all these things that I have labeled is what I'll talk about. I won't really spend any time with things that I haven't labeled because these examples are very good and very well described. But I'm going to go over things that uh, maybe if I didn't have a problem with, I know other people definitely did and still do. So, and some of these I of course had a problem with. Like intellectualization and isolation of affect. Sometimes that was a little iffy. So I'll go through the best way I think to think about the ones that look tricky. The ones that don't look tricky, I'm not going to explain because concepts like idealizing extremely positive thoughts of self, you know, or others, that just is intuitive, an idealized world. And then we'll talk about helpful connections, things like repression versus suppression, and blah blah blah. Okay. So, in my mind, the hardest thing here is probably fixation versus regression, and it all has to do with the stages of development that Freud was thinking about. Things like oral stages, anal stages, phallic stages, and the point isn't, oh, what are all these stages? Oral, anal, phallic, genital, whatever. But the idea was that people developed in certain stages. First they went through the stage that he called the oral stage. Then they went through the anal stage. Then they went through the phallic stage. Then they went through whatever stages that is. Fixation just means you get stuck at one of these stages, meaning you're not able to emotionally get past a certain thing. So here's an example. A surgeon throws a tantrum. Tantrum's obviously a childlike thing. The point here isn't, oh, what stage is this? Anal, oral, genital? What's going on? No. In this real world application, we're not talking about these Freud stages, okay? This was just used to show you where this all came from, where this all started, all right? That you had point A, an emotional development leading to point B, leading to point C, leading to point D, and on and on and on, all right? So in real world, you develop emotionally and stuff, and hopefully you keep on developing. But some people, they have the emotional intelligence, let's say, of a child. Okay, like they fixate on some things and they can't get past something. That's a good way of thinking about this. They can't get past this one stage. So in this example here, this surgeon throws a tantrum because the last case is ran super late. You or I would say, okay, well, it ran late. Okay, I'm just gonna have to stay later today and finish my work, later than I would have liked. That's like the more mature way of thinking about it. However, someone who has fixation as an immature defense will go to this, childlike stage of throwing a tantrum. Okay, because he didn't or she didn't progress, naturally. They kind of stopped right here. Right? Have this little, have this wall. That's what fixation is. You kind of stop in one place on your development, and when things get bad, you just aren't able to progress past it. Regression is different. Regression is kind of this. You go through this, and then you revert and go backwards instead of just stopping. So the example that they use is actually fantastic. It's someone who is potty trained after a stressful situation. Maybe their parents divorced, maybe birth of a sibling. They start wetting the bed. Maybe a kid was able to climb the stairs and run and walk and do all that stuff. And then after the death of a parent, now they go back to crawling or something. Whether that actually happens, who knows. But that'd be an example. Regression, going back compared to just stopping. Okay. Intellectualization versus isolation of affect. Something I want you guys to think about for isolation of affect is this idea of a gap. Okay. So for isolation of affect, you have a gap. Well, what does that mean? It means you're distancing yourself from your emotions. Well, so what? You do that for all these things. Yeah, the difference is I want you to imagine now an island, okay? Someone's on an island completely surrounded by water, completely isolated. And on land is all their emotions. So we'll say someone just died. Okay, someone's wife just died. Okay. Isolation is, well, all the negative emotions and difficult things that you have to go through when your spouse dies. Well, that's what's way over there. I'm right here. All right. So when you talk to someone who's exhibiting isolation, in the example of their wife dying, they would say something like, "Yep, my wife passed away this morning. I've got to go get my groceries today." Clearly the emotional baggage is not connected to them. And that's where this gap comes in. Okay? They're on this island, and the normal emotional wherewithal just isn't with them. It's somewhere else. Okay? It's not there right now, it's somewhere else. Similarly, if someone has a huge test tomorrow and they haven't spent the entire semester studying, they've just been goofing off, then they would say, "Yep, got my test tomorrow. All right." And then just continue with their lives. Like the impact of their situation isn't hitting them because they're isolated. They're on this island. They've created a gap from, the actual emotional burden in themselves. Intellectualization is a little bit different. Intellectualization, of course, you're sparing yourself from emotions and stuff, but you're just doing it by, instead of saying, "Oh, I've got cancer," by saying, "Ah, yes, cancer, problem. Their cells replicate, and you have some proto-oncogenes, and everything goes a bit nuts. And doctor, isn't P53 thing?" Like here, you're not facing your emotional baggage, not because of isolating yourself, just through, literally just using these words and these heavy concepts and trying to intellectualize. Hate to use the definition, the example, but by intellectualizing the whole thing. All right. Projection is different. This next thing here, projection is different from displacement, which we had mentioned last time, where displacement is, someone does something to you, so you go do something to someone else because you don't want all that. For example, you get fired from your job, so you beat your wife, or you get bullied at home, so you bully kids at school. Projection is different. It's not something happening to you from someone else externally. It's you do something because you have an inside feeling that's unacceptable to you, and you project it onto someone else. So, for example, let's say you have repressed homosexual feelings for one of your coworkers, a new intern, right? And you find that completely unacceptable. And so what happens when your boss gives the new intern a congratulatory mug? You shout something like "Hey, get a room, you two," because that's really what you're thinking. You want to get a room with the new intern, but you project it onto your boss. You say, "Hey, boss, you're the one with homosexual feelings for the new intern." And so, of course, in a bunch of movies and TV shows, you always have some wise guy saying, "Oh, projecting much?" So that's what you would see. Similarly, if you have an attraction to your hot female coworker, but you're married and that's not cool, you would say, "Hey, Jim, I noticed that you really like that you want to sleep with the new employee." And Jim would say, "What are you talking about? You want to do that? Projecting much?" Hey, there we go. Okay. Reaction formation. This is what you see in rom-coms all the time. Think of like some Katherine Heigl movie where her friend is saying, "Wow, you really like Joe over there, don't you?" And she goes, "What? No, absolutely not. I hate Joe. What? No." You see it in every single rom-com. Guarantee it. If you want to do a drinking game, take a shot every time your female protagonist goes through reaction formation. Splitting. Splitting is what kids do. Everything's either good or bad, positive or negative. The world is black and white. Adults see things in a much more gray scale and more nuanced way. And then repression versus suppression. Big thing. Repression is involuntary. Suppression is intentional and temporary. For example, you have to land a huge contract, or let's say you got to take step one or something, right? And 20 minutes before step one, your parents die. Okay. Well, if you're not going to reschedule it, you're going to Just say, okay, I'm going to deal with this in 9 hours. I'm not going to do it now. That's suppression. It's intentional and it's temporary. You'll deal with it later. Repression is, the imam raped you as a kid, or the nun did some inappropriate stuff to you when you were younger, and 20 years later in therapy, it all comes back out, and it was involuntarily withheld from you. So there we go. Remember, projection versus displacement, totally different. Isolation, you create this little island, this little gap. And fixation versus regression. One of them is you just stop in your development. The other one is you literally go backward. An example that they also give you on like tests or something is after the death of your father, you just eat junk food and like corn dogs, like whatever like children would do. These are questions that they love and are super high yield in your step 1, because being able to tell the difference between fixation, regression, projection versus displacement, isolation of affect versus intellectualization are super huge. Yeah.